Hey, what I miss? We're one and the same. Draptron here for another episode of Rational Saurographic. Today's episode is going to focus on things that I missed or forgot to talk about in the previous episode. Starting with the fact that I didn't showcase one of the two sets I had intended on going through last time. That being the Dryland Tersch Set 3. Ironically, I ended up showing off a brand new Dryland Tersch set that I had just whipped up for that last section. And here we are. First thing you'll notice is that we start off inside one of the tents. As it turns out, these tent models have fully rendered interiors that are usually inaccessible for the player to enter. But, with the help of what I'm going to call the mod of the day, Zero Cap Online's Skinning Objects Pack, this particular build is version 1.3, which comes with several new gameplay objects, such as Disguisable Handheld Object, Selectable Indestructible Object, Solid Disguised Object, and, the most important for the context of this adventure set, the Intangible Disguised Object. That's right, an object that can be disguised as anything that is completely intangible, which means we can pass through it without any sort of collision stopping us. And this isn't the only thing included in the mod, as it contains its own category of various in-game models, objects, and more. I'll leave a link in the description down below so you can check this mod out for yourself. Anyways, let's take a look around the set here. Okay, we have the campfire, the digging crew gathered around, Bobo holding a little trash critter, Dr. Rexen being mad at Bobo for trying to eat something he's not supposed to, and the local Dryland Tersch native out patrolling the camp perimeters. Okay, so moving on to the next thing that I had previously missed would be regarding our favorite lizard collie, Rex. Now last time I had mentioned how Rex lacks the invisible set of limbs that his lizard stock counterparts model possesses, making his walking animation a bit different as a result. However, what I failed to realize at the time was that Rex actually possessed a part that also affected his movement. Here at the base of his head / top of his neck, as well as right over his hips, are a set of bone tablets. Having detail parts along a creature's back can alter the way they walk. This is much more noticeable in creatures with more than 2 to 3 pairs of legs, and the number of detail parts attached also affects their gait too. Perhaps I'll go into a full explanation in a future video, but let's get back to Rex. So, funny story with Rex here. You see, partway through the production of last episode, I sorta accidentally deleted Rex from my Sporepedia. Yeah. Rex was gone. Deleted. Like he was never there to begin with. And naturally, I started panicking. Without Rex, there'd be no Saurosapients. No Saurosapients, this entire miniseries would be rendered
fully null and void.
So, in an effort to prevent this catastrophic paradox from ruining everything, I started frantically searching for a way to recover deleted creations from the Sporepedia. And after much trial and error, I found a way. So we're going to go through a sort of mini tutorial on how to recover lost / deleted creations that were deleted from your Sporepedia using Spore Modder FX. Now, if you don't really want to sit through this whole process, I'll put a timestamp up on screen for you to skip to, but just know that this whole side tangent will be relevant for later on in this video. This tutorial is going to assume that you are already at least somewhat familiar with the Spore modding application tool that is Spore Modder FX. But in case you're not, I will leave a link in the description down below to the GitHub page where you can check out and download the program for yourself. This tutorial is also under the assumption that you are running this on Windows, either Windows 10 or 11, much as I am. Anyways, with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get started. Step 1. Open up Spore Modder FX. Step 2. Open up Windows Explorer. Now, you're going to want to navigate to your game's app data roaming folder. To save you the hassle, here's the directory address you'll need. Once there, copy that directory address using Ctrl-C. Step 3. Returning to Spore Modder FX, go to File, and then Unpack Mod, or you could simply just input Ctrl-U. In the file name bar, paste the file directory address we just copied into there. There will be a number of .package files here, and we're going to select the editor saves .package. When asked for what format will be converted and unpacked, just go ahead and check all the boxes for good measure, and hit OK. Let it unpack everything. It might take a little while, depending on your PC. Okay, now we're going to go over here to the left with all these yellow folders, and scroll down until we see a folder named creature _ editor model wavy thingy, and have its content drop down like such. Here in this folder, there will be 4 types of files present. .bem, .creaturedata, .png, and .pollen_metadata.pollen_metadata_t. Ugh, that's a mouthful. We're only going to really need to pay attention to just the .png files though, as they're all we're going to really even need. Step 4. Scroll through the whole list until you find the creature you want to recover's PNG file. This can take a while, as literally every single creature you have ever made in the editor will be listed in this folder, starting from the oldest down to the most recent. If you can remember around the time when you made your creature, you might be able to figure out a better starting point as far as the whole list goes. Otherwise, you're going to be holding down the down arrow key to rapidly scroll through what could possibly be entire years' worth of creatures, flashing their image on screen for a split second. I don't recommend doing this if you have photoepileptic issues, by the way. But once you find the creature you want to recover's PNG, we're going to go up here to the right under Image Viewer, Inspector, and hit Export as PNG. Now you can name the PNG file whatever your creature's name was or not, as it turns out that doing so has no consequence, as you soon see, and save it somewhere of your choosing. I'd recommend to your desktop for general purposes. Once saved wherever you saved it to, check and make sure that the picture is 128 by 128 pixels in size. You can do this by right-clicking on it, going to Properties, over to the Details tab, and checking the dimensions. We can now just close out of Spore Modder FX and go boot up our game. Step 5. Once your copy of Spore is running and at the home screen, open up your Sporepedia. Next, enter the following keybind to put the game into windowed mode. Alt, Enter. Once we have done that, we're going to just slide the window over here to the side for a bit and go to wherever you had saved your now recovered creature's PNG file. This is why I recommended the desktop, by the way. And we're going to drag said PNG over onto the game's window. Okay. Returning to full screen, we're going to search for our recovered creature by typing their name in the search bar. And there he is.
There he is!
You have just recovered what was otherwise lost forever. It's actually kind of incredible just how much is really archived of your editor saves package file. Everything from various stages of evolution of creatures from your various saves, to overwritten and unfinished creatures at the time, to creatures you probably just completely forgot about. In fact, while scrolling through these files, I was actually able to recover more than just our lizard collie. I was also able to recover the first draft model of the lizard herder I had previously mentioned in the last episode. And, oh boy, I think we're going to need a disclaimer here. The following contains visuals that may be considered unpleasant and not suitable for those with weak constitutions. Viewer discretion is advised. Alright. Are you ready? Because I must warn you, I'm not. I'm a bit uncomfortable with what I'm going to show you here, so, here we go! Oh, God! Oh, look at him! Why did I even make him like this? His skin is so oily. The way his hair just comes out of his head and body is just disgusting. He's got a freaking throat scrotum. Why are his balls where his Adam's apple should be? He looks both shinier and more filthier than his later incarnations model. This is truly an example of me trying way too hard to make something look like the original that ends up looking absolutely nothing like the original. And then some in this case. But that said, however, I think I have an idea for this model's own place in the lore, though I'll elaborate on that later. But wait, there's more. I managed to find some old footage of the prototype model of Dr. Rexen, back when I was still using the first draft model. And funnily enough, as it turns out, the video file was just sitting in one of my main video folders, hidden in plain sight this whole time. You know what other video file was just sitting in plain sight right alongside it? Footage of the first draft Lizard Herder. It's crazy how that can happen. Footage of what I had just assumed was lost forever was just there in my video file directory this whole time. But going back to what else I was able to recover in SPORE Modder FX, I came across something else that I had lost, deleted, and had subsequently forgotten about entirely until then. For you see, as it turns out, this first draft model of the Saurosapients isn't actually the true first draft after all. That honor would go to this version. This is the true first draft attempt at making the Saurosapients in SPORE. For convenience sake, we'll refer to this iteration as Model 0. Now, he's actually not all that anatomically different from his successor, which I'm still going to call the first draft model, having the same hands, feet, general limb proportions. In fact, the only real major difference would be mostly in his eyes and head, or rather, heads. You heard me right. The Model 0 Saurosapient has two mouth parts, each overlapping part of the other. I think I went with this because I wanted to have this sort of toothed beak-like snout, with some bony detail parts filling in the gaps. Once more, This is an example of me trying too hard to make something look like the original that ends up looking nothing like the original. Not to mention, his composited head is just kinda too large and elongated to his later first draft and final design Saurosapient models. Coloration-wise, I quite like his base color and scale patterns, as well as his belly scales being a slightly lighter, less saturated version of the main body's scale coloration. The greenback scales, however, are kind of clash with it all, and it could have been better. I do like how I gave him a small row of spines down the back of his neck, though. Something I neglected to add in the final Sauros model, strangely enough. At least for a short time, but more on that in the next episode. But I think his overall design is fine. It's just fine, albeit a tad sloppy. It was my first try after all. So, why was this model for the Saurosapients completely and utterly scrapped? Well, let's go into the field to get a better visual understanding of why. I've set up a little adventure here off screen, featuring our Model 0 Saurosapient. Now, let's take a moment to observe him talking. Did you catch that? Notice that when he opens his mouth to talk, the two overlapping heads that were used aren't always properly aligned as it's intended, creating this awkward false palate as he speaks.
Subscribe to Drafter Ronin.
Still though, even if the head or heads situation is a bit frustrating, I think I might have some use for the rest of his model in the future. Next up on our list, we have the old-timey photoshoot set, featuring Dr. Rexen's grandfather. This is Dr. Theel G. Rexen, grandfather of Dr. Gaither T. Rexen, and great-grandfather of Jeff's P. Rexen, Dr. Rexen's nephew, whose name is now retconned to be Jeff's, as to avoid association with a certain billionaire island-owning predator. Anyways, Dr. Theel G. Rexen is best for... well, maybe it's best I let him tell you himself. Take it away, Mr. Theel.
Thank you. My dear listener, my name is Theel Gaither Rexen. I have dedicated my life's work to a study of anthropodal archaeology, paleontology, ecology, evolution, and domestication on behalf of the University of Tuataria. Our man-pets, livestock, and beasts of burden have always sparked a sense of wonder and intrigue into me since I was a hatchling. Growing up on our family's homestead in rural Estonia, I was amazed at how our pet collie chimp was able to perceive our emotions, how it was able to pick up on the simplest of cues as to what our flock of man-cattle needed, and convey it in such a way that we ourselves could understand. I thought to myself, what if there's more to them than what we'd perceive them to be? Growing up in Estonia, my family were devoted members of the Church of Squamous. Every 7th morning, we gather ourselves to worship at the local temple. Here, we would hear stories from the holy text, telling of how a sinful race of degenerates that came before us drifted further and further from God's light, until there were no more than beasts. Of how a pair of unheavenly creatures were cast out of paradise for going against the word of their Lord, while a pair of saurians had stayed true to their word and were gifted the right to eat from the very tree that the sinful counterparts were tempted into eating from before. It had always struck me as curious. Could there be a grain of truth behind these tales? Were these so-called degenerate beasts still among us? It was these ponderings that would lead me to pursue my work in the field of anthropodal studies, and ultimately led my own colleagues, my own students, laughing me out of academia.
Okay, I think I can explain the rest from here. Dr. Theel G. Rexen had a very controversial, for the time, thesis statement describing how the ancient Yahoo, or what we as the audience know as the Lizard Herders, were descended from an even older race of Yahoos, of whom had sophant levels of intelligence, that all of the man pets, manstock, beasts of burden, etc., were in fact the descendants of the very degenerate beasts that had, quote-unquote, fell out of the favor of God's grace. This was ridiculed by much of the Soros scientific community of the era, either regarded as secular ideology attempting to infiltrate the field of critical thinking, or as just a weird fringe theory. While the concept of the star people once existing, their civilization collapsing, and them losing their humanity as a result had been floating around for a few millennia by then, it had largely been propagated through a mythological and later on religious lens. In an era of the Saurosapients history where religion as a whole was experiencing a major decline, with the fields of science and technology coming its place in society, the smart Yahoo theory had come about at the worst possible time. As for Grandfather Rexen's design, I figured I would have him in very era-appropriate attire, sporting a top hat, monocle, and more late 19th century-esque gentleman clothing. As for his color palette, I actually went with the white chest and inner limbs for a reason. It adds contrast in a sepia filter. Yes, much as how reddish pink helps allow for better detail and picture quality in black and white film, having this splotch of white on the limbs and chest of this model's body helps add contrast to him in sepia. Heck, he almost kind of looks like he's wearing some white sleeves and pants if you weren't already aware. A neat little paint trick that I took a bit further in a later creature. An old-timey photo shoot depicting Dr. Theel G. Rexen alongside a reconstructed skull of Anthropithecus robustus, a species of ancient Yahoo dated to exist around 22.5 million years ago, which brings up the whole timeline of this all so far. Let's see here. 23 million years ago, the lizard herders and lizard livestock lived in a region of the world that would later be known as the Dryland Tertiary Formation. 22.5 million years ago. An extinction event that would be known as the Great Drying occurs. Lizard stock and their herders would migrate and disperse out across the planet. The Dryland Tertiary expedition conducted by Dr. Gaither T. Rexen on behalf of the Department of Anthropological Paleontology of the University of Tuataria took place in what I will call 1923 ED. ED, short for evoquivocal date, plus it sounds similar to our calendrical epithet of AD or CE. While the smart Yahoo theory proposed by Dr. Theel G. Rexen came around, some 42 years prior, so doing the math here, around 1881 ED. And if we're going to be establishing a timeline here, Act 3, taking place 230 years after Act 2, would date it to about 2153 through 2176 ED. Or perhaps from the Saurosapients' perspective, 30 to 53 SE. SE standing for Supremacy Era. But I think we'll save all that for next time, as I think this video has gone on long enough already. Next time, we're jumping forward 230 years into the future and visit one of the largest cities on the Saurosapients planet, Tuataria, and explore the culture, its residents, and how establishing contact with other post-human races has affected the political landscape that governs over the reptile planet at large. So if you're interested in that, be sure to... Oh god. Oh wait, I almost forgot. So I had an idea for our very ugly first draft Lizard Herder's place in the lore. He's not going to be what any of them actually look like at any time. But instead, his model shall be an inaccurate reconstruction, something akin to in all yesterday's take on the Lizard Herders, by a race that already was familiar with uncanny humanoid animals in their daily lives. There we go. Alright, take care everyone. I'm going to need a break from all tomorrow's content. I don't want to get burnt out on it, after all, but I should be back with the series before too long, so until then, stay woke.